regular,
9:59.
thank you. We'll open up our regular session for October 1st, 2014, and if everyone could please silence or turn off their cell phones and join us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So Denise,
We have one deletion, the solar lease proposal.
okay, and as I mentioned, it's kind of, it's just as information. I talked to our roadmaster this morning, so you might want to call it an addition. He just wanted us to be aware that his budgeted, and we'll just take that right now before we have public comment, his budgeted item for quarter minus chip seal rock has been, that project's been taken care of, and he was able to, with Monteville Power's project that they have going on, the Atlee Crushing Company went ahead and crushed up Rick's tonnage for chip seal rock while they were on site, and what that did is save us a substantial cost because there was no mobilization cost associated with that project since they were already there, so. Very good. That's,
Just for the audience, Frank and Brad, we mentioned that the solar lease proposal was taken off of today's, and I know that that's why you came today. In work session yesterday, we had Todd Gregory of Obsidian here with all the paperwork, and we went ahead and approved the proposal for down the road for him to, for his company, to potentially put 320 acres, is that correct? Of solar out at the airport on the west side of the taxiway.
Wow.
So that could generate quite a bit of electricity and revenue for the county.
20 acres.
And it's a lease option. During the option time, they will research, do the necessary inventory of wetlands and other things, and look at the proposed site, what would qualify and what wouldn't. Then we would negotiate an actual lease for the property.
Yep.
yeah, and I don't know if you said that, Commissioner, or not, but 45 megawatts of power,
Yeah.
that's a lot. So, okay, our first item of business is public comment, and that would be for anything that's not related to the agenda at this time, so if we have any public comment.
The gentleman on the left
Yep.
confused me when I first came in, and now I forgot why I came.
Okay. We'll look down through the agenda and you'll remember. So.
My job's done.
I'm not, we have all our other business in order, and I don't know what the pleasure of the board is, but we do have Brad Augustine here. I know he is interested probably in this discussion, so we can either zip down through the items as we have them listed. I think they'll be fairly quick, or we can jump down to that. What's your pleasure?
Well, why don't we just stay with the agenda and get,
Okay.
we have the work session, I think we can get through the
Yep.
agenda items before that pretty quick,
Yes.
because I think that discussion may be a little longer.
Yep, Mr. Berman, you're up. We called it the window project change order, but it was just a change order during the replacement of the windows and the painting of the courthouse.
Okay. For the audience, can you just describe what that project is?
As we moved along with our projects we're doing, we needed to make some changes out here on the sheriff's door, the approach on the above there, so we had to kind of figure that, so it had a little bit more cost to the project of what we needed to get done. So we put a change order in to fix what it took to get it done.
The concrete overhang at the back entrance is deteriorating due to moisture and freeze and stuff, so we're addressing that.
As well as it comes all the way out to this edge of the commissioner's meeting room, and it'll all be encased when all is said and done, and no longer an issue or problem or an eyesore or safety issue.
I'm good with it. There's budgeted dollars worth within the capital improvement side of it to cover this.
Yes.
Correctly. So I'll move to accept the change order between Lake County and DeVray Builders LLC in the amount of $11,356.82.
Second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the change order with the Rye Builders LLC in Lake County for the repair work on the back entryway and the overhang all the way up this direction. So in the amount of $11,356.82. Mr. Bailey, you got to see this, so any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, next up,
Just real fast, Dave might want to mention our timeline on the windows. We've all noticed that there's nobody putting windows right now.
They, a couple weeks ago when they got all their windows in, they sent wrong windows and didn't send all the parts. Well, so they had to go back, send some back, and then they had to order so many more windows for mainly the third floor. Well, they're not here yet, and there's only 3 windows that they could actually put in yet. So what they decided to do is not send their whole crew over here from Medford, wait for all those to come in, and then they'll return next Tuesday, and then they're gonna stay until it's done through the weekend, everything until they're done. But it was hard for them to send their whole crew over, and they could put 3 windows in, and they'd be sitting here waiting for windows.
And that is because not their order mistake, is the mistake of the supplier.
Yeah, from the supplier.
Thanks for the update.
And then also the paint guys are supposed to be here to kind of finish painting. Haven't seen them yet, but they're supposed to be here this week to be painting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann, Park and Rec grant agreement?
So this is a Oregon Park and Recreation Department grant that the county was awarded to create a Lake County Park and Rec Master Plan. The amount of the project budget, is $50,000. The Oregon Park and Rec payment is $37,000. And then there's $13,000 in match money that comes from the county, the town of Lakeview, the health district, the Ford Family Technical Assistance Grant, and the Bureau of Land Management. The goal of this plan is to coordinate and collaborate with all the agencies that currently provide park and rec programming or facilities, but also to do a pretty significant public process to understand what the public needs and desires are. The outcomes are a planning guide and document to move forward for development and implementation. And it seemed like great timing with the CHIP program and the focus on healthy communities and increasing physical fitness levels to reduce heart disease. So it just a lot of efforts kind of came together with this idea and this park and rec plan grant.
Well, it'll go beyond just the healthy side of it to ATV, to other type of hunting, fishing, recreation and everything. It's all recreation.
Yep, yes, it will. Non-motorized trail is part of the statewide planning. So the state has planning goals for park and rec things too. So this planning document will also incorporate what the state desires as park and rec goals, and then what our public desires, and then what we can do with agency cooperation.
Yeah. John Lane, he's no longer with the Park and Rec on the ATV side of it, but he's a wealth of information, and as we're doing the ATV, the ordinance is going through, that's another component that Park and Rec is part of also.
Great.
Also, the comment of to solicit from the citizens what they want. But it was called to my attention that just one little sentence, non-motorized trail connectivity will be a central focus throughout this. How did that kind of predetermined or?
So the state has that goal, and that's why, and this is their application, how are you gonna meet our state goals with the park and rec planning?
Okay.
So the state goals are that people have ways to get to recreational facilities or parks by foot or on bike. So they're using some kind of physical fitness activity to get there. So they're saying, hey, let's connect your parks with your gyms? You know, is there safe walking routes there? Are they inviting? Can people get out and walk to work? Can they walk to go do these activities?
Okay.
So the state has that non-motorized goal.
Also, I learned last night on the email, been in communication with Rocky Houston for the Parks and Rec Trail System. And he mentioned that the State Trails Advisory Council will be meeting in Lakeview on the 17th. But I don't have a location or time or agenda, and it wasn't on their website.
Okay.
So anyway, for your heads up, trying to get confirmation that he really meant the 17th, and if so, what location.
So I would hope that October 17th, there's a lot of agency involvement.
Contacted the BLM last minute, and they was not aware.
Okay.
So maybe Rocky just gave me the wrong month, date, or something of that nature, but I'm following up on it.
So Hank, can we talk about the two things that you were gonna address yesterday in the plan? Well, maybe three things: the involvement by the schools, the inclusion of the whole county, North Lake as well as down here. Because it does talk about that under the, I think it was the, I don't know if it was the CHIP survey, but it just said, the Community Advisory Council assessment. The third highest health concern facing South Lake County is a lack of recreational facilities. I don't know if we're,
That was also identified in the northern part of the county.
yeah, just so it's in here. And then the last thing is the funding. You know, we've been asking, and I think totally support $1,000 towards the match, but we do talk about if the Ford Family Foundation doesn't come forward, which you believe it will, that Lake County's gonna pick up the difference.
And then that's not, that's one option, obviously. There's several options at that point in time if that technical assistance grant doesn't come through at 5,000. So then I'll have conversations with partners and with, obviously, Lake County. It will, so,
Well, we talked yesterday about the fact that Forest Service isn't listed here or the school, so we didn't know where that was at, so.
Also, was the North Lake Health District approached the health district in this end of the county was, and they contributed. Have the health district in northern Lake County been
no,
approached?
so they could be another contributor.
Yeah.
If we,
Yeah, they don't have the same amount of financial resources, but just any little bit would give them ownership.
right.
So who's the signature to this, you? Ann?
It can be, it's not specified. I am the billing contact and I'm the administrator on the grant, so it
Okay.
can be.
Okay.
Jim Bailey did review the grant agreement. I didn't state that yesterday, but he did look this over.
One of the things I check when we get these things that look like they're just nothing but a positive thing on our side is what happens if we have to terminate the agreement, and to make sure that there's nothing onerous at that time. And what they've got for termination is by mutual consent or 30 days notice, and then accounts are simply set up so the money is all appropriately taken care of, so it looks totally fine.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm good with it.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve. Ann, do we just need the grant number?
Sure.
LG 14-020, the project is the Lake County Park and Rec Master Plan. And in the amount, the total amount of $50,000, of which $37,000 will be net by the state, and then there's local matching funds as listed of $13,000.
Second motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the LG 14-020 grant application in the amount of, for the Lake County Park and Rec Master Plan in the amount of $50,000 as met by the state of $37,000 and then local matching funds of $13,000. Other discussion.
We probably should, doesn't need to be in motion, but the lead person on it is Ann,
Yeah.
has taken the lead to push this and apply for it and follow it through. So,
And the matching funds, Lake County is 1,000 of the matching funds at this time.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Ann, are you gonna work with the state and have your treasurer job duties across the state change to include some of these other things that you're doing? We appreciate it.
I love living in Lake County. I think everyone that lives here has some reason and tie, and I think we have a lot of great things to offer. I think Park and Rec planning is kind of the next phase for incorporating economic development into our area. We have a lot of great models where Park and Rec programming is why people choose to live somewhere. And I think now with today's technology, people can choose to live anywhere. So if we can enhance the amenities that we offer, which people are looking for, those Park and Rec items, then maybe we can increase our population base, along with all the other great things that are happening in Lake County right now. I just think we're on an upward trend that's pretty exciting, so.
Well, thank you to you and that whole group that's been working on this. I know you put a lot of time into it, so.
A lot of involvement, yeah, a lot of partnerships, it's been great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we discussed briefly yesterday the Watershed Council web education request from Marcy. I didn't find out anything.
Didn't have time to research. I'll just leave it on the paper and maybe bring it back on next Tuesday or sometime after we contact Marcy and see if she can come before us and expand a little bit more on.
Well, I think, I'm not opposed to that, but if we're gonna have her, ask her to come, we better be prepared to look at a place to try to find the money, and I haven't found a place to find the money at this point where Title III isn't eligible. So if you have a suggestion, then I would agree to bring it forward, but I don't have that at this point.
Well, if we can't find a specific budget item line, there's always contingency for the unforeseen opportunities. You asked for an option.
Okay, we'll move on. Next up is the offer to county the mineral and geothermal rights from the Weyerhaeuser Company. Mr. Bailey?
I don't find anything wrong with doing this. There's no liability that we would incur if we agreed to this. I think the transfer will be, we have to look at the nature of the transfer because it would not be a single document that would transfer everything and have that recorded. We would probably ask them to transfer according to the documents by which they acquired the different tracks. That could be a few, it could be a lot, I just don't know. But clearly, they've gone out there and they have a lot of area. So whether or not we're talking just a handful of quitclaim deeds to the county or hundreds, I don't know.
Well, what I asked of Denise this morning, and she'll explain, I asked for Denise to go check with the Marititle and see a rough idea of what it would take to just have them follow through to make sure everything's legitimate and everything. I want you to sort of give us an overview of what you found out if we were to go that way.
I took over all of the listings that they provided to us, and the title company estimated a cost somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 to do the title searches on those. They recommended having an attorney, wink, wink, you, draw up a mineral rights deed. It's a mineral rights deed rather than a quitclaim deed.
Right.
So
But for everything?
for
Is this thing for each?
each individual one.
Okay. Well, that's the practical issue is how many.
They don't do those, they said
Yeah.
they don't they won't do the mineral rights.
Do you know how many
But
tracts of land we're talking?
It'd take them about a month to do all of them. There's about 28 of them.
Oh, okay.
So take them about a month to do all the title searches, because they have to have that done in Klamath, but.
All right.
that's
For
it
the,
right now.
for the audience, the subject is Weyerhaeuser owns little blocks of property scattered throughout Lake County and probably other places. They are selling their interests out, but they're offering to the county on those pieces within Lake County, offering us at no cost, except for research, the mineral rights. And we have no idea if there's any valuable minerals or anything. If there isn't, that's just the way it is. But we're entertaining the thought of accepting that contribution.
Do we know why they're offering to donate this to us instead of making it part of their sale?
I don't.
But it's not unusual for counties or real estate agents to, I don't know if real estate's the right word, but not unusual for counties to hold the mineral rights on properties.
Oh, that's right.
And so I think it's a good faith gesture towards the county to get these. Don't know that for sure, haven't talked to the lady. I personally believe, I'll just put it out there, I think what we ought to do is exactly what Denise said there, pretty much is use a title, have you do the legal side of it. And I think it's legitimate to pay for this out of our land sale dollars before we distribute those out, because that's an allowable cost there. So we've had a pretty good land sale, the monies are sitting there. We need to do it, just get it done and over with it. We've waited 2-3 weeks now, and I think we need to move forward.
But I'd be curious to know, Mr. Bailey, what you might think might be the drawback. I
don't know that there's a drawback. I'm just always, it just raises a question when someone, back up a little bit, you're absolutely right, that when the county sells property, then typically the government agency retains the, but in this case, they're all already owned by a private entity. And if I were buying a piece of land from them, I think I'd want the mineral rights. Why they would be selling them off without the mineral rights and then wanting to transfer the mineral rights to us, I don't know. Other than maybe a tax issue, they could assign a value to it that is above the apparent value, which is 0, and work it that way. That would make some sense, they would do it that way, but, you know.
So you don't see an issue with this?
I don't see an issue in us accepting the donation. It's not like we're getting a Trojan horse or anything like that.
Never know.
What?
It's true, you don't know.
So if the board would agree, we could do it by consensus or by motion to give direction to Mr. Bailey to do the legal side of it, have Denise or Garland, whichever one appropriate, get it to the mayor title and start the process and pay for it out of the land sale though.
If that's consensus, I agree. If that's a motion, I second it.
It's important enough, we probably ought to do it.
Yeah, I think you do a motion to accept the donation,
Yes.
and then the consensus is what you just described, because we'd be doing that anyway.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we accept the donation of the mineral/geothermal rights that's been offered to us by Weyerhaeuser. And the other just by consensus.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the offer from the Weyerhaeuser Company for the mineral rights of the stated lands out there, and to go through the appropriate process with the title company and with our legal counsel to take care of it. Any other discussion?
And the gist of doing the title search, and that would identify if there's any Trojan horses.
Yes. I'll just say, I'm glad that she said there were only 27 tracks instead of 20,000, which is what I was afraid you would.
I should have, just for fun.
Yeah.
There was a hesitation where my mind
We are
filled in the
being
worst.
So would we also have legal counsel draft some correspondence to Weyerhaeuser stating that we've
Accepting
accepted
it.
that?
Contingent upon us doing our.
Okay.
Let them know that.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
give them
Yeah.
some correspondence, because
Right.
we've been a few weeks out.
You give Mr. Bailey that information on the contacts. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, our next item is described as ordinance proposal discussion. It's continuation of this on potential taxation upon marijuana. Mr. Bailey.
Well, to put this in the context, we've got Measure 91 is kind of going to come before the voters in the November election to approve to allow the retail sale of marijuana. At that point, counties will not be allowed to tax retail sales unless they already have a tax in place. However, even if you have a tax in place on retail sales, that creates a question as to whether or not that tax would survive the passage, because the measure says that local governments cannot impose a tax on retail sales. So if we had a tax on retail sales ahead of the vote, assuming it's approved, then the question would be whether or not that tax would survive the approval. My opinion is that it would not. It would be challenged, and the tax on retail sales would not survive the approval of legalization of retail sales. The other question, though, is whether we could tax medical marijuana dispensaries. That's a separate issue. I mean, it runs the same in the same direction, but it's a separate issue from the approval, since the measure only speaks in terms of taxing retail sales. So it appears we do not face a similar deadline in having an ordinance that addresses sales out of medical dispensaries. There's a practical issue, of course, and that is if we were to tax medical dispensaries beyond a certain amount, then no one's going to bother getting medical marijuana. They're just going to buy it as a private transaction.
So, I'll start some of the discussion. I struggle with, let's go with the recreational side of it, and that's what the taxation is sort of the talk I've heard about.
Right.
How can we put a tax on something that isn't legal? How can we do an ordinance today to set a tax on something that isn't legal?
Yeah.
I understand everybody wants to get it there in case it becomes legal, but is that legal to set a tax that isn't legal?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems with it, and one of the issues that, one of the ways in which it could be challenged later is that you would be imposing a tax that has no substance. You don't tax illegal activities.
Yeah, I don't
So,
feel
I don't
right
know that
about
it would survive the passage in making it legal. It's just an odd thing. And the point is, the reason why that's part of the problem is that the measure clearly anticipates preventing, and actually specifically prevents, taxation below the state level. Any county or municipality that creates a tax prior to this passage is clearly trying to say, oh, we've already had our tax in place and therefore it survives, because the measure only talks about taxes being imposed after the measure. Well, there's no point in taxing it before the measure because you're not going to collect anything. I believe that if any county, when there are a few that have done this, have already created a tax in an effort to get through this possible loophole in Measure 91, I believe that that loophole is going to be closed ultimately by the Oregon Supreme Court. I don't think I think my advice or my recommendation is I think it'd be a waste of time to attempt to impose a tax on the retail sales of marijuana, because you're just gonna, it's not gonna survive a challenge after the measure passes.
Well, if we take the emotional side of it out, marijuana, and it's any other product that's going to become legal to be sold.
Right.
It's not drugs, there's nothing like that. If we look at it just as the procedure side, as far as the governing body of the county, is would we put a tax out there to tax something else that was going to become legal? come November. And that's why I'm trying to do my job here, sitting here, is no matter what it is, would we impose a tax on
Right.
it? It's because.
Well, that's a philosophical issue about,
Yeah.
Well, it could be philosophical, but for me, we're the governing body, we're making a decision for taxation.
right.
And so it's
So does-
it's following the right
Oh,
procedure.
yeah, I agree, any taxation decision is a significant one for a governing body and shouldn't be earned too lightly, so.
Yeah, it's-
Well, I'm gonna chime in, because I'm the one that keeps bringing this up to the board to discuss, and to Mr. Bailey. I'm not a legal expert in this, but I have been trying to follow it. And so my question, and it's merely a question, and that's why it's here today, in part and parcel, because after the election, there can be no taxation if the citizens agree that something should be taxed. My understanding, Mr. Bailey, we were kind of at cross purposes before talking about this, but I think we're on the same page now, is that an ordinance wouldn't impose the tax, it would allow the tax to be imposed by the vote of the people. So my question merely is, as a board, because there's other people, and it's not because other people are doing it, is the rationale for doing it.
Right.
But other people are moving ahead with this, other communities, other counties, with having that option available. It's not saying you're gonna tax anything, but if you don't do it before the election, you remove any opportunity to. So that's why it's here.
Okay,
So, Commissioner, what I heard you saying is that if we were to go through the ordinance process between now and the election, that we would then be approving a tax.
well, that's
So
the way
that
I
after the,
understood it.
well, that's the way I understood it to start with too, but after further review, I no longer understand it that way. That it just gives you the opportunity to do it. And I've heard the range, honestly, from, and Brad's with us today, I know he wants to visit about this a little bit, but I've heard the range anywhere from 10 to 25%, and they leave the option there to put before the voters, what kind of tax do you want to impose? But I'm hearing Mr. Bailey saying legally, probably is a waste of time. So it's just to make sure that we've done our due diligence on this subject.
Well, that, what you say is a whole different thing than where my mindset was. I thought it was imposing a tax for when, if it became legal. If we would be imposing or putting an ordinance in place for a process for there to be taxation after it becomes legal, that's a different spin on it. That would go to the voters.
And that's what I've understood in this, and I, like I said, but that's not from somebody that knows it legally, but I've listened to it, I've listened to the discussions on TV primarily from Jackson County and communities over there, and, you know, to that end, Gold Hill, I think, has a tax on their medical marijuana, their one dispensary that they have there currently, which isn't the issue for the vote in November, but it spurred this whole discussion that if it's approved, if you don't have it in place, you have no option as to whether or not you impose a tax. It is no longer available to you, that option. But it doesn't ensure that if you pass an ordinance that you will, because it will go to the vote of the public. And I don't know, that's why it's on here.
Right. It's similar to when we, in the previous election, put the nonpartisan commissioners, the election of commissioners changing it to nonpartisan. We had to pass the ordinance that then put it before the voters to approve. It'd be the same thing. We would pass an ordinance with regard to imposing a tax, and then the voters would decide whether or not they wanted that tax.
Any taxation needs to come from the
Right.
voters. And also, if you pass an ordinance, we're still within the 90 days, unless we could declare.
Yeah, you have to declare an emergency because we're within the 90 days of the election. So there are a few hoops to jump through. And you could probably justify the emergency by saying that we have to do it now, so that we can get it on the ballot. But what you mentioned with regard to different levels of tax, that's the point of the ordinance process. You go through the ordinance hearing process in which you get feedback on, for example, what the percentage of the tax should be. Should it be 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever? And then you go through that whole process of hearing the public, so that you don't put something on the ballot that's doomed to fail because you didn't get any feedback from the public. That's the whole point of the process. However, stepping back from that, I think the fact that another problem is everyone's gonna have a different taxation, and that's clearly something that the measure does not anticipate and doesn't want. So it's gonna be yet another basis for challenging this, instead of having taxes everywhere and everything different. I'm absolutely 100% confident, any tax is not going to survive the passage of this.
So could we do an ordinance then for a vote in the future for taxation and for the percentage to be decided by the voters also?
Not for retail sales.
We couldn't do an ordinance in that.
Not for the future. If you're talking about getting an ordinance passed and then putting that on the November ballot, we can do that provided we declare there's an emergency for putting it on the ballot short of 90 days advance notice.
Couldn't our
I
ordinance
would
just,
recommend against that.
couldn't it be just generic enough that it says we reserve the right in the future to,
No,
it can't?
no.
There's
It's a good idea.
There's a whole bunch of legal twists on this, a lot of people arguing both sides of this, so I do believe it's going to go after November.
Oh, it's definitely gonna be challenged, and I'm willing to take bets it's gonna fail. All these taxes are gonna fail.
I agree.
I'll take bets on the ordinance the measure passing, I'll take bets on all taxes failing.
And I'll make the same bet, do we split the revenue?
What is the state asking for tax?
It just reserves the right to the state to impose the tax.
So are they at 35% like Colorado, I heard? Or?
No, that's not the plan. They want to tax it to the street value, the street sale value. They don't want to tax it so that a legal sale is more expensive than a black market sale. That's the problem in both Colorado and Washington. So Oregon's approach is to tax only to make sure that it's equivalent to the black market sale, to eliminate the black market.
Otherwise, if I had to pay more for it because of the tax, I'll go in the back alley and buy it instead.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll be there for you. Just joking.
Yeah, I fully agree with our counselors that the state will most likely erase most of these individual taxes because they all overboard. I somewhat support a tax because it will increase our law enforcement duties to some extent for duties and whatever. But at the same time, taxing one item indiscriminately to anything else kind of goes against my philosophy.
Taxing on the dispensary side is a different issue because that is something that you could tax so that it goes up to the retail sale value. That way, folks are not avoiding the retail sale tax by going to the medical dispensary. So you kind of do the opposite of creating black market, even though it's still illegal. You're just making sure that no one's attempting to avoid the retail sale tax by going to the dispensary.
Well, apparently Oregon's theory on the black market and not wanting to get past that, if the counties impose a tax upon the state of higher than, plus what the state does, then you are going to be higher than the black market.
Yeah.
Which makes it more desirable to purchase it illegally.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would defeat the purpose of a measure that creates legal retail sales.
This is, you can argue this so many different ways, talking about the impact on our services, if it becomes legal, yes, I believe it will. We have a lot of that impact right now with the black market on our services, with no revenues to help pay for the cost of our services. So
The tactic I would favor is to lobby our state legislature to share some of that taxation back to the counties for that purpose.
Right.
And it actually should come back to counties through mental health, through
Law
DUI
enforcement.
grants and different things you would think
Well,
possibly.
but doesn't the taxation on alcohol sales and cigarette tax, well, doesn't that come back currently now in a formula?
A portion of it does.
In the formula.
In the
state-
formula, yeah.
And the state would probably apply the same formula.
Can't say I agree with the formula, but
Yeah.
it is.
So they do. Yeah.
Frank?
As I take it, we're talking about taxing, medical marijuana. And this,
That's,
Two different things.
you've
We're
got
talking about two different things.
medical marijuana, and you got just outright retail.
okay, but that's where you're not talking about putting a tax on medical marijuana, but on recreational.
That's
That's where I,
Well,
yeah.
I'm against it any way you go.
Oh.
Thanks for clarifying.
that's something I'm right there.
I didn't know that.
But the state will impose a tax just like they do on alcohol and cigarettes and everything else. So I agree with legal counsel. Whenever they pass whatever is legislation, they're gonna eliminate the local taxes because local taxes are all over the board, plus on top of state taxes.
Well, all I was getting at, with medical marijuana, if I wanted that, I would have to have a doctor's prescription for that. And if you're gonna tax that, you can tax any of my other prescription drugs.
Yep.
It's truly not a prescription, it's a medical marijuana card. It's not prescribed, it's just a medical.
Well,
It's,
Yeah,
Now you're playing with
Terminology.
the system.
terminology.
well,
Is that legal, Your Honor?
Well, since we're on the subject, Frank, because it's, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, but all the prescriptions you have in your medicine cabinet that you get from the doctor, you go to a licensed, certified pharmacist to get it. Medical marijuana, you don't. Someone that's providing you with medication for your illness that was prescribed and you got your medical marijuana card to purchase it, can be anybody that has a storefront that sells it. So there is a difference between the two by a large sum, I believe.
With the medical marijuana, there's no pharmaceutical differentiation of quality or requirements or anything. So it's not like if I go and get some Prilosec or something for acid reflux, it's been tested and it's specific within a realm of effectiveness. Marijuana, I won't. But Jim could grow strain X and Dan could grow strain Y and it'd have totally different
Oh, yeah.
THC and whatever.
Mine would be better.
You'd be better.
well, I'm gonna take this a little bit different here, we seem to be going sideways. So if we were to, and the voters imposed a tax in Lake County, how is that tax collected? How is it administered? And with our population here and what we would guess would be the amount of taxation, would we spend more money trying to collect it and administer it than what we would gain? You can't answer that, but we have to think about if there was a tax put in, how are we gonna collect it? Who is the tax collector? Obviously, probably, I guess, I don't know, the assessor's office or the county or how that would be, then we'd have to administer it.
Yeah.
And that's added work on somebody, or else it's gonna be a whole new thing. And is there gonna be enough taxation within Lake County to even pay for the administration part of it?
Well, that's an excellent observation, because suppose you, in your ordinance process, determine that, well, okay, 10% is a good tax. Well, later you find out that it's not enough to offset the cost of administering that. You can't raise the tax. Measure 91 would not permit you to raise that tax. That would be a new tax, and it's clearly not allowed. So you're absolutely right. You would have to be able to look into the future and determine both, is it sufficient tax and that it's also not too high. Good luck doing that.
And also on the subject of passing an ordinance under emergency clause, we would pretty much, to make it effective, we would have to declare emergency.
Yes, you would have to.
Philosophically, we've had this in front of us for months and months, and it have not been an emergency.
You know, you'd have to
have new information that.
Yeah, and that'd have to be some sort of, I think you can do it as an economic justification, but, you know, let's be frank about it. We're gonna be trying to gin up an emergency rather than recognize an emergency exists, so.
I think
Will there be any free samples?
Only for people who've been married 66 years.
Jimmy, would you pan around to get the crowd?
Okay, so
That was very good, Frank.
I'm gonna try and sum this up, that through legal counsel's advice and the discussion by the board, that it's the board's choosing at this time not to pursue this, of which means we're not gonna pursue it at all, because this was kind of the last last opportunity to consider an ordinance proposal. Is that?
That's where I'm at.
that's-
Well, today I understand even much, I put some time into this, but different twist on it today than I've been working with what Mr. Bailey brought forward, a better understanding of, for me, and I've questioned doing it under the emergency clause. I think if it's gonna be fought, I think that would be one component to be fought very hard against us. And so I believe the state's gonna tax it, and we will probably see the distribution to us
Percentage.
on that. So I'm just not ready to go forward with an ordinance that I think would be overturned.
You know, I think the best way to sum it up is that it would be a bad idea put forward as a sham for an ordinance that is not gonna stand legal challenge. I mean, it's just, there's
I think
layer upon layer of problems with it.
I think with that said, and the likelihood that if we did go and turn our opinion around here in the next few minutes, someone would access the video of this discussion, and we'd be in a world of hurt, so.
But I would acknowledge that we do have two citizens of the public here with us, and we did receive one email from a public, that person being a pharmacist, that is supporting a tax
Yes.
to cover the sheriff's duties or any other miscellaneous. But we've talked about that scenario and the likelihood of getting an ordinance passed and so forth.
I feel there's a lot of negative aspects to marijuana, and any money derived from pot should be put back into the community. So I'm gonna be looking at, doing things if I have another dispensary, so your tax isn't gonna be high enough for me, okay? Because it should be given back.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And just one more comment on what Commissioner Kessner said, because we do have the email. I did receive a phone call from this pharmacist this morning, stating essentially what's in the email, so. Okay,
There's a person up in northern part of the county to ask for us to keep that person abreast. You still have that contact? I gave it to you. I'll follow up on it.
Okay.
okay.
Might have it in my tax file, or my
Marijuana.
ordinance file.
Your tax file.
Yeah.
Okay, meeting minutes is the next item.
Meeting, moving on. We have meeting minutes of,
September 17 and September 23.
move to approve as submitted September 17th and September 23rd, 2014.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from September 17th and 23rd as presented. With a discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Just for the audience, we commonly review these for any draft editing or anything before they ever come, so it's just a formality of approving at this time.
We had department updates yesterday, unless Denise has anything else.
I don't have anything additional.
Okay, legal updates for open session.
Just to keep you abreast of this, since the mental health unit voted to join the union, we've had discussions with the union representative to begin the process of integrating those employees into the courthouse unit. And it's going slowly only because the union rep has moved slowly himself. So we're moving forward on it, but it's going slow.
Thank
And we have one discussion for executive session on potential litigation.
H.
Basically, what's
Yes.
that, the people in our mental health department has not been part of the courthouse union. They went through the process to get integrated into the union so that they'd be part of the courthouse.
That would be under the commissioners for supervision, like the probation department type thing?
Well, they're underneath our,
Umbrella.
the county department.
Oh, yeah, but you,
All of our departments have a department head. We have a department head over there. They're already under the global part commissioners. Adult corrections has a department head, and it's over.
I'm so surprised you guys have so much responsibility as commissioners. I had no idea.
Most people don't.
I found out the hard way at one thing.
We're the mental health authority, we're the public health
Yeah.
authority,
Yeah.
amongst many, many other things.
And they only paid you $16,000 a year years ago? Oh, my goodness. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now that you understand the broad
Yeah.
scope, you can put your name in and be the county commissioner.
I'm a convicted felon that can't get off probation because of where it is here in probation that you supervise. It's okay, I'm cool.
Okay, we're gonna
Okay, I'm cool.
go out of our regular meeting and into our executive session under 192.6602H. Those that will be remaining in the press can stay and gag.
Gagged and,
Video.
well, not recording.
Yeah.
They're gagged and no recording.
And legal counsel, the three commissioners, and administrative assistant Denise Thorstead. So,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate